Right.
The broadcast is live.
Hello,
everyone.
Welcome back. We've been off for a little bit, but this is our little book and movie club called Read, Watch, Vent, where we read books and watch the movies they're made into, and then vent about whether we liked them or not. And, everybody's allowed to have all of the opinions that they want on here. Love it, hate it, Also, no hard feelings, because we know that no one wants to write a bad movie or a bad book, but sometimes it just happens, and people got to talk about it. So,
Yes.
I was once a part of a play called Volcano that will live in infamy forever, and my boyfriend will never let me hear the end of it. So, accidents happen. Anyway, before we dive into our main topic tonight, Erin, do you have any updates for like fancy actor projects and stuff that you're working on?
I do. I'm going to be in a podcast. I'm going to be in a podcast. It's called SOS Humanity Earth's Last Distress Call. I believe that's the full thing. It's called SOS Humanity. It's by this group, or Peripheral Friend Production, which what a cool name. But yeah, currently recording that. I'm doing 4 different characters, and they are all different ages, different types, different dialects. So maybe see if you can tell which ones are me. I doubt you general public can, but maybe Chloe can.
When is it dropping? Where do we find it? Do we know?
It's dropping in 2022. We don't know when. You know what? Guess what? We're going to meet a couple more times in the future, so I will have updates as we go. But it's going to be fun. It's kind of like a parody thingy. A bunch of little vignettes that are like parody vignettes, funny, quirky.
Nice. Yeah. Love it.
What about you, Chloe? What have you been working on?
Well, if you guys are just coming in for the book club and you have not caught my Twitch stream on Uncanny Prose, we have started a whole new season with a whole new game system that's like homebrewed Monster of the Week rules for a role-playing style framework. But it's this amazing Lovecraftian mystery where I play a girl who, recently got out of the psych ward because she had some magical stuff happen to her family, and now she'd just like magic to be done. But she has been pulled into this mystery and now is apparently in charge of trying to make sure that a magical zombie virus doesn't wipe out her city and possibly more of the continental United States. Also, she's a super senior, so she'd also really like to not have to do a 6th year in college. So, the stakes are really high. And I'm with a motley crew of other people. My roommate is there who's super excited that magic is alive. And I'm like, no, you don't. Nope.
I feel like that's the most anti-Chloe thing ever. I feel like you would love it if magic existed.
I feel like I would have very mixed feelings on it because I've read so much like mythology and stuff like that where we're the lines of magic and reality are blurred, but it just always ends badly. Like, I would love it if I could fly, but that seems more like a physics problem than a magic problem. I just don't know.
I want to know the rules.
Right?
What are the real rules of magic? Like, does magic have a price? Do you need a wand? How, like, what boundaries here? It's the same thing with ghosts. What are the rules there?
So anyway, I'm pretty sure we'll encounter some ghosts. There will be further explanations because we got a pretty sophisticated like world that we've built out. We spent January building the world and the city, and now we have this mystery for you guys. We're doing season 1 of Weldport. That's what we're calling it. So tune in on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. For many adventures, and you can drop in for just one episode because we have it on episodic like sort of style, but it's also going to be telling a big season arc that's going to go through Halloween. So,
yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's great.
So, but yeah. So for those of you who are here for the book, let's talk about Ready Player One by Ernest Cline.
Oh my God, I freaking loved this book.
Have you read it before, or is this your first time reading it?
No, it was my first time reading it. And when I say read, I mean listen, because I have such little focus to actually sit down and read things. But
no, you like to multitask and be extra productive with your time. So you listen.
I drive a lot. So it works. But I started off and I listened to it like halfway through the first chapter. And I was like, I'm gonna get ahead on this. And it was Wil Wheaton who was reading it. Wil Wheaton, who actually makes an appearance in the book, funnily enough.
Yep.
He like manages, I don't know, the video game world.
Yep.
That's cool, being the president of the Oasis or whatever. But wow, my brain just hit load.
So this was my second time reading it, and it was bizarre because the first time I read it, it was soon after it had come out, and like it came out in 2011, and I think I read it in like 2013. Back before VR was like a thing, and back when, you know, we were still nice and innocent, and the world hadn't gone through several additional collapses. And so I remember reading it and being like, oh, this is really cool sci-fi. And then I was reading it this time around and I was like, this sounds like news.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was very like period accurate in a way where I'm like, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So much sense. So much sense.
It was just so good, but also so cringy. Like,
so in terms of like overall themes for the book, I think the biggest thing that caught my attention this read through was this idea of being like in a future that is more advanced than what we're at, but nobody's really getting any benefits from it being more advanced. So you have this kind of like, it's dystopian, but it's also progress. Mm-hmm. Sort, you know, everybody has access to a school. It's just an imaginary school where you have to sit in a VR helmet all day. Yeah. And simultaneously being obsessed with the past when it was better. And the 80s were great for a lot of people, but they were also not great for a lot of people. So
for living in the real world, hell no. Serial killers all over the place. How did the children survive?
Freddy Krueger was just around every corner.
I know.
Well, and there was the Cold War that was going on, and like there were all sorts of weird like things happening in the 80s. It was the beginning of a lot of prosperity here in the United States, but there was also all sorts of things that we're learning about now, like systemic racism and whatnot. It was a huge issue, and all sorts of weird sexism. If you're in the entertainment industry, you hear stories about women coming up in the 80s. You're like, I'm sorry, what happened to you? And they're like, no, that was just normal. That was just Fred. He's fine. Just don't be in the same room with him. You know, like, so it was interesting to me, this idea that like, we've progressed, but we're obsessed with the past, because I feel like that theme actually really resonates with how weird we are right now, just in general, with being like, I'm excited for the future, but also the past is where all of our successes were, so we should just try to get back to when it was better.
Yeah, except it wasn't better.
Well, and I think that's... Go ahead.
That's the crazy thing, is that it's better, but it's not. But then the future's better, but it's not.
And life is just hard. It's just hard wherever you are.
No, my favorite thing that I have read recently is that life is the biggest like prank joke ever, because it's literally like, I didn't ask to be
Sign
here.
up for this.
I didn't sign up for this. I just appeared because you made a decision to do something else, mom and dad. Then I'm forced to be here. And then I grow up and I have to pay bills. I didn't ask for this. What?
Was not my request.
Life is a joke. It's an absolute sham, which is why I understand people would want to spend it in the Oasis, where they can fly around in spaceships instead.
Well, and they can have nostalgia for a time that they did or did not. They were most of the kids who are in the Oasis were not around in the 80s, so they don't know anything other than what they've read in books, which is very interesting because now you create a nostalgia for a time that almost didn't exist. You create a nostalgia for something that was more pure than what it even actually was. That also traps everybody in this obsession with this is the only thing that's important in life.
But here's the interesting thing for me about it is that, yes, all of these kids found this nostalgia for the 80s, became obsessed with the 80s, but they became obsessed with the 80s not because like what's happening today where the trends come back around, where like time just repeats itself. This guy, if you haven't read the book, there's a really rich guy who created this really cool VR space that was available to everyone, and then he dies, and then he decides to make this whole big video game thing where he's like, hey, go find the secret thing that I left in my video game and you win $1 million bajillion that used to be mine. And no one can find it. Like no one can find it. But his whole thing is that he leaves this great big book called
Halliday's Almanac.
Yes. Not Halliday's Almanac, Anorak's Almanac.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Okay.
It's changed in the movie.
First freaking rant. So I let Chloe know. When I started it. The minute I started this movie, and we go in, and like within the first 10 minutes, I message you and I'm like, I'm mad. I think it was way less than that, because I think about 10 minutes in was when we found out that they changed the name of Anorak's Almanac. So Anorak is the video game character of this rich guy, Halliday. So in the movie,
I think that that's an interesting change that they made.
Why?
Well, so I don't know that I like it necessarily, but I think it might bear discussion, because so the book and the movie is so much about like what is important and what is real, right? Like, are the relationships they're making inside the Oasis real? Does their real life that sucks actually matter, even though they have no resources and no ability to change anything in the real world, and only that influence in the Oasis? Also, like there's the love interest throughout the whole thing, where the main character is in love with this girl who is playing the game with him, and she's constantly like, dude, you don't know me. And he's like, what are you talking about? We spend 24 hours together. Like, we're together. What do you mean you're a fake person 20 hours of the day?
Yeah.
Like, you have an avatar on, but don't tell me that's not real. So I think it's interesting because in the book, the rich guy is like, this is Anorak's Almanac. This is my avatar's almanac. This is what I've created in the game. And then in the movie, it's Halliday's. It's the real guy. That's his name.
Well, here's the difference is that Anorak's Almanac, number one, the name is so much freaking cooler. So why would you change it? That's number one. But Anorak's Almanac in the book was a book about his interests, what he likes, versus the movie where it's Halliday's Journals, where it's just a room where they play like his life. in video footage form. But the thing that I am saying is that the reason the kids became so obsessed with the 80s was because of this thing, but it was one of the things that the reason he started the whole egg hunt was because he wanted people, the rich guy, sorry, I forget that there are people listening who have not.
Halliday. By characters' names. Halliday's name, yep.
Halliday has not, like, he was a loner. He was a loner, and people saw him as a loser, and he liked weird stuff comparatively to what everyone else liked. And all he wanted was for other people to be interested in his interests. Yeah. So after he died, he compiled this whole big thing of like, this is what I like, and this is the key to like
a fortune.
Yeah. So
Jeff Bezos money.
Yeah. Which I'm like, that's freaking cool. Like, that's so cool.
I think it's cool. I also think that it's a very interesting, tragic character to write. Because as you learn more about Halliday in the book, you begin to realize not only was he a visionary, because by this time in history, right, he's created this oasis that everybody depends on. He's the most famous man in the world because he's like willed his entire fortune to whoever finds his Easter egg that he's hidden in this game. But as a real person, he was just lonely. And he made choices that were making him more and more lonely. And those were the choices that enabled him to become famous like he was. And you parallel the kids finding his Easter egg, to a certain extent, making some of those same choices. I think one of the most interesting decisions in the book is when we get the four main characters, and they build a friendship, and then they basically break up because they're like, we don't work together to solve these mysteries. I'm going to solve it by myself. It's a puzzle. I have to solve it by myself.
Yeah.
Because that's the rules. And I don't clan with anybody.
Honor.
Yeah. There's a weird sense of honor. There's a weird sense of these are the rules. There's a weird sense of I don't want to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And the our main hero, Wade Watts, just like locks himself in a room for a year, paints over his windows, locks himself in a room, becomes the most famous egg hunter in the world, but is literally like in a rig in his room by himself.
Yeah. Completely alone. They can't
solve the problem until they actually come together again.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, continue. Mm-hmm. So I think it's an interesting, like, tragic art that the kids almost recreate and then don't at the very end, and that's why they're able to ultimately like prevail.
Well, here's an interesting thing that I noticed is that throughout the entire book, they're like, we're not working together. We don't do that. We're not a clan. We aren't gonna team up and then split all the money at the end. Like, we go solo.
Yeah.
Then at the end of the book, they all join together to fight, along with pretty much everyone else in the Oasis, to fight the IOI. IOI are the bad guys. The IOI troops and such. Avatar troops and such.
For those of you who have not read the book, IOI is a company. It's like Integrated Operation Systems or something like that. It's basically like Apple or Amazon, and it wants to find the egg because it wants to control the IP. It wants to monetize the Oasis, which has been free up to this point, and it just like is pure like capitalism. Like, this would be a windfall for our company because of course it would be.
Yeah.
You get that kind of money as a company, and of course. But everybody's very worried because they're the bad guys and they're going to kick people off if they can't pay. And of course, this is the dystopian future where nobody has money.
Nobody has money. They're literally in skyscrapers of trailers.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so anyway, so they come back to beat IOI in the end.
Yeah, they come back to beat IOI in the end, but then once again they are split up because big grand finale surprise shock. Not going to ruin that.
I was going to say, spoiler alert, you can, if you have not read the book and you want to, skip ahead 10 minutes. But actually, I think this is an important part to discuss.
Really? You want me to spoil it?
This is a book club. Everybody has read the whole book.
Okay.
It's also an older book, so if you haven't read it by now, this has been your spoiler alert. Come back in 10 minutes if you don't want to hear about the end of the book.
Yeah, because it's a doozy. The end of the book is a real doozy. Okay,
so they break up. Yes, they do break up to get for Wade to ultimately.
Yeah, so they have their meeting, and then they break up, and then in the end, Wade's like, "Okay, we got to get together if we're gonna beat IOI." So they all fly in on the robots, which there are robots, and then there is a big explosion that literally kills everyone on the planet in like the final level, except for our man Wade Watts. Yeah. Who got a extra life, believe it or not. But so he's alone going through the video game to try and, find all the stuff. However, he's alone in the game, but he's got everyone else surrounding him in the room, like coaching him in real life. So it's this weird thing of he's alone in the Oasis, but he's surrounded by everyone in real life, but he can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
He's like with them, but not with them. But then, like I was saying, because, they weren't a clan, even to the very end, in the book, when he wins, he's like, I'm splitting it with my clan. And I just went, all of them in the books would hate that.
You mean in the movie? In the movie, he said that.
Yeah. In the movie, they said at the end, yeah, I'm splitting it with my clan. And I just went, no, because it goes so against what they said in the book. And I'm like, why, Chloe?
I don't know. That one I don't have a good reason for, because I thought it was really well done in the books, because Wade has figured out a lot. He's clearly better at this than just about everybody except for Artemis.
Mm-hmm.
But he can't do it by himself, which is how most good games are designed. And I think it's interesting that Halliday, as much of a loner as he was like, no, this game needs to be collaborative. Like, that's actually, this whole thing would have probably been solved way sooner if people had actually collaborated. And let's be real, there's more money than God on the line. So, but anyway, so that's kind of the theme. So Wade is like, no, we need the right thing to do. And that's, I think, the other thing. He as a character comes to, this is the right thing to do. If I'm the last person in the room as they're making their plan to go take down IOI and get to the last challenge, if I'm the last person in the room, Wade is like, I'm splitting it with you guys because that is right.
Yeah.
And when he does it in the movie, you kind of lose the moral choice there, and the choice to be like, no, this is a team, not because we have weird ties or because, I'm the hero, but because you guys helped me. I couldn't do this without you.
Yeah. And the way it was the way that they designed the different challenges, the different gates, how they attained the keys, that it bugged the shiznit out of me, simply because it did not give these.
Are we talking movie?
Yeah, we're talking a movie. We're talking movie.
We're going to get to the movie. I thought that the challenges in the book were super cool to me because I did not grow up with that era of video games. And in fact, I barely grew up with this era of video games. I cannot game, but I know a lot of gamers. Yeah. So I've watched a lot of video games and I know how intense it can be. But I thought it was really cool how much of a love letter to the 80s and to that development of this gaming technology was in this book, because there's a lot of actual kind of history in there, like
Yes,
for
that's
tiny
what
games.
it took. Like, what they did in that book took so much research. Like, what they did for their challenges took so much skill.
Yep.
Because I'm sorry, being able to play Pac-Man for like 12 freaking hours straight and without making a single mistake, like, that's a feat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was video games, but they freaking trained their asses off. They researched. They put their entire heart and soul. They watched so many hours of war games.
Well, and they actually educated themselves. Like, they don't go into this in the book a ton, but the implication of all this research they're doing, they're researching like the technology that made an entire era, basically, and the movies that made an entire era.
Yeah.
They're giving themselves a PhD in game development and story development, and like, I don't know. And it's that's not just me as an artist. I'm like, this is important stuff.
No, because it's not just like the pop culture fun stuff. They're also, they can like name the artists, the year it was made, like what was culturally happening at the time. And it's like, they're smart. They're really, really smart. Yeah. And a lot of people don't give, like, they're like, video games rot your brain, which I'm gonna say neither here nor there, but because
they have evidence that it doesn't. Actually,
great, awesome, fabulous, because like these kids deserve so much credit, and I feel the movie took it from them. I'm yelling in my apartment. People can probably hear me.
No. So, okay. So I have to get to my favorite moment in the book, I think, which is actually the very last minute. So if you came back from not wanting spoiler alerts, go back away for 5 more minutes. Because I usually hate just weird shoehorned romances, and the romance in this one initially kind of started as just like that typical like high school, like, oh my god, I love her, she's so cool because she's a gamer girl sort of trope. And then the whole lesson for these two kids is get out of the game and live your life.
Yeah.
Live your actual life.
But what? Okay, yes, and yes. Sorry, continue.
Well, and then I love that there's this epic battle, right? And they win and they're all excited and everybody wants to like come meet in real life for the first time. And Wade is like, no, I need to go see Artemis really quick. And so, and the two of them have a moment and then the book is over.
Mm-hmm.
There's not like a resolution or like an epilogue or anything like that. And I was so happy that the movie ended on that moment and that choice of, no, actually, I think human connection is actually the important part.
But I did not like how they ended the book, because they didn't end, or not. I love the way they ended the book. I did not like the way they ended the movie because it wasn't the book. Well, because they broke the veil before they were supposed to. Because the whole thing with Artemis that makes it so romantic and lovely is the fact that Wade meets Artemis, that's her avatar name, and he's like, holy shit, she's so cool, she's so popular, she's so pretty, she's so smart, and they have this online romance. Mm-hmm. And then when he's like, I really like you, she's like, oh hell no, that's gonna get in the way of the game, we aren't doing this, absolutely not.
Which, for the record, I 100% would have done at that point. It's like, no,
it's true, because here's the thing, is that at the very end of the book, like one of the first things he walks out and says after he meets her, he's like, you were right. We wouldn't have been able to find it if we were still like dating at the time, like
Yeah.
like that, if we were spending all that time together. And she's like, really? I thought maybe what I did was wrong. And it's like, oh, you're sweet, baby.
You were so smart. You were so smart. You put some parameters that were healthy.
Yeah, but here's the difference though, is that at the end of the book is the first time Wade ever meets Artemis in person. Versus in the movie,
yeah, it's
they they see each other like halfway through, not even halfway through.
No, it's halfway through. It's halfway through.
But
yeah.
they bring
the halfway point is the ball. So they meet a little after the ball.
Yeah. But that it absolutely devastates me, because the whole thing about Artemis is that she's like, she puts up this hard boundary because she's like, we can't, if we are going to find the egg and save the oasis, we can't do this, and I will meet you later.
She has her heart in the right place. Like for Wade, it's still very much a game, but in the book, she's like, no, there's actually like global repercussions if this company gets control of all of this. It will be terrible. And she's the one that gives Wade like a real life purpose to anchor his like objective to.
Yeah.
Beyond just like, I want the money.
Yeah.
Which she kind of does in the movie too. She has a speech, but I feel like her speech is from out of nowhere. Which, you know what? We're at a good place. Let's transition into what we thought of the movie. And we can start with what they did with Artemis, because I think they were trying to make her, I would think they were trying to center her in the movie a little bit more, especially because they flipped her and had her do the infiltration of IOI instead of Wade.
I didn't like that either.
I think it was trying to be a girl power move. I think it was trying to be like it's a female protagonist. She has to be the one to take the risk so she can be the strong one. But I was just like, you kind of just made her a damsel, because then she was stuck there without a plan, and the guys had to save her.
There was literally, that's exactly what I was thinking, is that they 100% turned her into a damsel, because there was literally a point where they were like, what are you going to do now? We're going to go save Artemis. And I went,
no, Artemis is fine. Well, I mean, but she wasn't, because of how they had set it up. She was literally going to be shot.
Versus, yeah. And the difference between how Wade infiltrated IOI in the book and the way Artemis infiltrated is that Artemis didn't really have a plan. She was just going in and like, okay, we're going to figure it out. And she nearly got shot. She got stuck. She got in trouble. Versus Wade, who had a plan the entire time, and the entire time was in control.
Yeah.
He was in control the entire time. Were the stakes still high? Yes. But like,
we were arguably higher too, because you as the audience didn't know. Like, we flipped out of being in his head to like watching him and being like, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, no,
it was a smart writing choice.
It was so good in the book. It was so good in the book. That was one of the most satisfying parts for me, was just being like, this smart son of a gun. Because when he was like indentured, whatever, so Wade is a computer genius. He made himself ring up a ton of debt, and apparently this major Amazon company, if you ring up debt with them, they can just take you and make you an indentured slave. Which, like, hey, look out for that in the future. No, that terrified me, because I'm like, makes sense. But he like fake rung up a lot of debt and then just got himself indentured for life. And it's like, this is actually the way credit cards work. Not a credit debt
in the future. Please let this not be the way credit cards work.
Yeah,
no,
stay on top of your credit cards.
His plan, I thought his plan was great. It was brilliant. It was really good, and it was just a lot simpler in the movie. which I understand. Like you cannot translate one for one from book to movie. Which I want to actually talk just a little bit about the translation process, because Ernest Cline was actually involved in the script for Ready Player One, which I did not realize, and I was a little bit surprised about.
I'm very surprised and skeptical.
So he was involved, and he's involved in the development for Ready Player Two, which is apparently in the works as well, still with Steven Spielberg, which is based on the next book that he wrote. And he was like, I really wanted it sounds like he wanted to make something a little bit different with the movie. And I wonder, this was my thought when I saw the first race, when I was watching it the second time around. I remember the first time around just being upset because I wanted to go to an 80s nostalgia movie and there was no 80s nostalgia at all. And I was mad about that.
Yeah.
That hurt my heart. It was like, no, my expectations.
The biggest difference between the book and the movie. If you were to summarize the book would be a love letter to the 80s and old video games and history and all of that.
Yeah.
The movie was a video game movie about modern video games, but it wasn't even about the games. It was just
it was an adventure story. It hit the big plot points of the story of the novel, but didn't give the characters enough time to breathe. And when I was watching that first race, I was like, oh my gosh, like there's actually a lot of really specific branded IP in here. Like there's like references to a ton of different games and movies and whatnot. And I was like, okay, this would actually be very difficult to license, because I know that like the stuff that's referenced in the book is older, but a lot of it is still like expensive to license because it's kind of iconic.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, so maybe they couldn't, I'm surprised that they couldn't get any of it because it's Steven Spielberg, and Cline actually credits Spielberg with the reason they were able to get as many licenses as they were, which there's a ton of licensed stuff in that movie.
Wait, so that's why wait. You're trying to tell me they couldn't get the shit to put it in the movie?
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if there were certain things that they just couldn't get for whatever reason, because people who hold, like the people who made that stuff are no longer around. So it's their heirs or the executors of their estate, and maybe they just didn't, I don't know. But there's a lot of licensing issues involved in making this movie, like a ton. And you have competing licenses that you need to be able to present at the same time. And so I was like, okay. But the thing that I was like, I saw there was a big Jurassic Park reference in that first one. And there was also like a King Kong reference and a couple of other Steven Spielberg movies. And I was like, Steven, you can't, if you don't want to make this a love letter to like the games of the 80s, make this a freaking love letter to yourself in the 80s, because you were working in the 80s. And give me my damn 80s references, because you own a lot of them.
It's just astonishing to me because like in the book, all of the challenges were based on video games and 80s culture.
Yes.
And the clues were all in that.
Yeah.
Now I understand how difficult it would have been to translate them because a lot of the stuff was very cerebral based on what these characters already knew. Like how he figured out the jade key. Literally, he was like, I'm going to look at this piece of plastic and it's going to remind me of something that reminds me of something that reminds me of something that then ends up being the answer to the clue. And I'm like, what the fuck? How did you get that? But anywho, I understood how that thought process would be very difficult to translate. However, They did like the clues were just as ridiculously difficult to find because it was literally instead of Halliday's or instead of Anorak's Almanac, a book about all of his thoughts and likes, it was video of his life. And
Right.
you're telling me like that is a life. This man died in his 70s. And they have video, and you're telling me these kids sat down and watched
what, 70 years of life?
like because they're picking up because the first one was literally one tiny little sentence. Also, it was like a line of like, yeah, the world's moving too fast. I just wish we could all go backwards in a conversation he was having.
Yeah.
And so he's like, yes, I shall drive backwards. But I'm like,
that's not.
If I was Halliday, I wouldn't even remember that I said that shit. Needless to be like, I'm gonna base an entire challenge off of it.
It was kind of weird, and I think it messed with what gave the book so much heart. I think Steven Spielberg wanted to be on the cutting edge of a bunch of special effects, which it is worth noting. Ready Player One won an Academy Award for special effects that year. The movie, I remember seeing it in theaters with like 3D glasses and everything. It is gorgeous.
Yeah.
It is so beautiful and immersive. I just think there was a real opportunity missed by completely ignoring the 80s. Like, it is literally the setting of the book. Let's ignore the setting. I question that decision. Even if you know it's going to be difficult to translate that setting into something that's as visually cool as like Halo on a movie screen, which is, I feel like, what they were trying to do more.
Yeah.
Than the 80s.
They had the thing about classic video games is that a lot of them involved strategy and puzzling.
Yep.
Versus the video game challenges that they were having were shoot 'em ups and racing games.
And they're very visual. So I get the urge to like translate the cerebral stuff into a visual game. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. Because it's like, I understand this is hard to do. But then there were other things where I'm like, okay, I understand how difficult that would be. And, you know, probably watching Pac-Man at a really heightened moment isn't as cool as, you know, watching people flood a volcano.
But
a bunch of things.
If you took the time, which you can do in an over 2-hour movie, to develop your characters instead of developing every plot point, then I think you could. Because I think that's where the translation and the adaptation of this movie lost it. It was like, okay, we have to hit every major plot point. And they do. They hit every single one.
Characters.
What?
They ignored their characters and right from the jump with Mr. Wade Watts. Number one, I am bitter because he was supposed to be from Oklahoma and they
did not make him
and just made him from Ohio, where the final setting was, which I'm like, that's stupid. Because I was excited when they're like, he's from Oklahoma City. I'm like, you don't see us in books. That's cool. Even though it was specifically where he was living in a high rise of like ratty old trailers, slums.
It was also one of the biggest cities in the America at the time. So congratulations.
No, it's true. Oklahoma City is one of the biggest cities in America, simply based on our size, not by our population, but how big we are.
Yep.
Lots of suburbs. But this kid, one of the things that pissed me off more than anything was in the first 5 seconds of the movie, because in the book, this kid is poor. He is poor. He is known for being poor. In life, he is poor. In the Oasis, he is poor because you have to have money in real life to have money in the Oasis. And in the first 5 seconds of the movie, he walks into the Oasis and then buys some new hair and changes his hair. And I'm like, where the hell did you get money to buy new hair if you don't even have money to leave your school planet?
Yeah, I think they could have gone, and again, that takes it out of the setting. Like you are getting the plot points without by abandoning your setting. So, and I'm sorry, welcome Jack's Law. Aaron, we have someone who's watching on YouTube. Yeah, you can make a ton of cash from playing real games. However, in this book, that's not an option until you hit a couple of prereqs, and the main character for this book did not hit those prereqs. He's a teenager. But so it was challenging for him to like get out of poverty, and that was actually a big theme, like trying to lift yourself up out of poverty. And it didn't get translated into the movie at all. It's a really important theme, and he does end up making a lot of money in the book, but it's not really a thing in the movie because we're very obsessed with the visuals. I think the visuals and the plot, again, we lose the characters. However, I will say this. I did really like what they did with the leader of IOI. I thought he was very well cast, and I enjoyed watching him as a bad guy. And I loved IROC. I'm sad we never got to see him as a real person, but I loved what they did with IROC. He's not even a thing in the book beyond like the first quarter of the book. Like, he's just this annoying guy with a god complex who you can just tell by his voice just sits in his basement all the time saying mean things to girls online.
Yeah. He is 100% the person who is like cussing out 11-year-olds in Call of Duty. Like, IROC is okay.
Hey, tell me about what you felt about the main villain in the movie.
Number one, what was weird is that his voice fit perfectly to what I imagined in the book, but his face did not. His face was not what I imagined. So that was different. But I think he was really good. He gave off very much alpha bad guy vibes, and just the fact of like honestly his avatar looked like what I imagined he was in the book.
Which I liked that. I was like, all right, so this, and that's where the visual stuff of this could have been so good to enhance what the heart of the story was and these characters. And I feel like they diverged so much into cool visuals that they forgot the heart of what they were doing. Yeah. Sorry, Mr.
I do.
I know you wanted to make a good story here, but I don't like your adaptation, Mr. Klein.
Yeah.
So villain. So was there anything? So we've actually vented a lot about the movie. Was there anything that you liked about the movie in comparison to the book?
I'm thinking. One of the things that I had to vent about is that all of the characters were too hot to, like, all the actors were too hot to be their characters.
Yes.
They tried de-hotifying Wade, and I'm like, I see you under
You have a flat stomach, you're still hot.
So, Artemis, you're too hot for this. Like,
yeah. And it was such a big theme in the book, the idea that like your looks don't matter, and they had a girl playing a male character throughout the entire thing, and like a black girl playing a white male character, and they got into that in the book.
That was in the book, but it wasn't in the movie.
And it wasn't. It was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, no, that was a major missed opportunity, and it was 100% a thing that I could tell where I'm like, we're just gonna make it a magical guy character so that we don't have to address this issue that is addressed in the book.
It's a girl. There's a female actress who plays that character, but they don't really address it.
But her avatar is a guy, but in the book, it's a regular old white dude. Versus in the movie, it's
it's like an ogre,
giant ogre thing, and she looks really cool, and she's a badass in the movie and everything.
Yeah,
but I'm like, you made it a mythical character, so you didn't have to discuss the issue of race that was brought up in the book.
Well, and sexuality, because she's a lesbian.
Yeah.
So there's a whole thing that gets touched on, and it's very important in the book. And again, because the movie adaptation focused solely on plot points and not on character development, we lost that, which was, I think, a shame.
Yeah. All visuals, all pretty pictures, which is devastating just because it's Jack's Law. I'm glad that you think this is fun, because I think it's fun too.
Jack's Law, have you seen this book or read this movie? Have you read this movie or seen this book at all? Because if you have, we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Feel free to share. I'm trying to think what else. I think, honestly, my biggest thing overall is just don't cut out the heart of your story if you're going to make an adaptation. I'm the biggest proponent in the world of like adapting something that's a little different from the book, because it's just not going to translate. I get that. But don't disappear what everybody loved about your book, which every time I've ever talked to somebody about this book, they're like, it was so cool. And it was all those games I remember playing as a kid. And it was like, we talked about Pokemon, and we talked about Godzilla, and we talked about Atari games, and none of that was in here.
I think a lot of it also had to do with trying to update the movie for the audience that was going to watch it, because it was a young adult book that was being turned into a young adult movie. Mm-hmm. And if it had all of those Atari and old school video games and didn't include, Halo and Mortal Kombat and
I will push back on the idea of it being a young adult book. I do not think it fits the YA novel. I know a lot of young adult people who would consume that kind of story, but because the primary story is not a doomed love triangle, I don't think it qualifies. But if they clearly made a movie for a YA audience.
Yeah.
Because I guess they probably thought that would make more money, which doesn't make any sense to me. Millennials is a huge audience, and we all love the 80s. We're like obsessed with the 80s. We are literally living in the times of this book. So just give us the 80s.
Do you want to hear some of the notes that I wrote down, my angry notes?
Yes, and then we will conclude.
Yes. Okay, so number 1 was being pissed off about Anorak's Almanac. The second one here is Karen, not Kira. They named how Karen. Really? Okay, so Halliday is in love with his best friend's wife.
Well, no, he's in love with a girl, and he never says anything, and his best friend is also in love with that girl, and the best friend says something. So again, we have this theme of like living inside yourself versus actually living in the world, which is beautiful, and also was glossed over in the movie.
But like, fucking hell, Karen.
Yeah, like, I don't know why you make that.
It's the little things like that where that absolutely makes me irate.
You're just like reading the book along with the movie, like they missed it. They missed.
Exactly. Which is like what makes me maybe an awful or a perfect person to have here for this.
No,
What
no, this is what it's about. We get to vent about these movies, and to be perfectly honest, Steven Spielberg has made his money. We're punching up.
Yeah,
I don't care.
right.
And I am very excited to read Ready Player 2, which is Ernest Cline's next book. And I will 100% watch the movie when it comes out, whenever that is, because I'm interested to see what they do with it, even though I was not satisfied with this one.
Yeah. Okay, wait, I have more. Can we talk about how much space he has in that van? Like he has an entire rig in this van where he is doing jumping jacks and running around. And it's like, have you ever seen a van that big that you can do jumping jacks in the back of? And it was like a regular creeper van. It was not like a giant meat truck or something like that. Also, excuse you, he was located in Oklahoma, not Columbus originally.
They had to constrict the timelines. They didn't have time to fly everybody all over the country.
But they could have had the Elven world.
I really liked that they had the two Japanese brothers, one of them like literally being 8.
I know. 11.
Everybody's like, you're so little. He's like, fight me. You're like, oh my God, I'm so that was cute.
One of my favorite lines was, what? Do you want me to tattoo I'm 11, shoot me on my forehead?
Yep.
Shoot me.
That's how games work. Although, I don't know, when I see an 11-year-old in a game, I just assume they're way better than me and I run.
Yeah, that's usually true. Okay. In one of the pinnacle moments, Wade says, "You killed my mom's sister."
Yeah, that was weird. I was like, just say it's your aunt. Everybody knows what an aunt is.
You killed my mom. And I figured it was going to stop there, but no, it kept going, which freaked me out.
He said it, you killed my mom. And I was like, that's confusing because she died of cancer. Oh, no.
You killed my mom's sister. Artemis's birthmark was practically invisible. And that was the entire reason she was in the book, why she was like, I don't want to see you in person. I want to show you a picture of me, because she was embarrassed of her birthmark. And then in the movie, it was practically invisible, which pissed me off. Okay. So the Japanese brothers were named Daito and Shoto because it is in reference to Japanese samurais, 2 different kinds of swords they carry. Yep. In the book, they just call him Sho. They don't call him Shoto, and they don't give any... They take out the historical and cultural context behind that specifically, like why that specific name was chosen, which pissed me off. The other thing about the
book is very diverse, and the way that they adapted the characters, not the casting. The casting I thought was great, but the way, well, aside from how pretty everybody is, but yeah, they really whitewashed a lot of the issues, which is weird.
Yeah, or ogre washed it.
Ogre washed it. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm not like Holiday. I'm taking the leap. The love story.
Oh, yeah.
I literally wrote the love story makes me sick.
The adaptation of the love story didn't work because they didn't develop the characters. They were just like, oh, they have to meet. Oh, now they have to go on a date. Oh, now they have to be in love. No, give us.
They don't need each other because it builds tension.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What else do I have? More stuff that isn't as boring. His entire brilliant scheme is gone with tears, and it's about the Iowa thing.
And yeah, I'm actually not going to type this out, Jack's Law. The licensing for this book is 100% something that would have been a nightmare. In fact, the author actually talks about, like, I never thought this book could be made into a movie just because of how many things I reference. And it's 100% true, because I don't think they could get the licenses for most of the Japanese stuff. Now that you point out the anime, I think it might have been a lot of the Japanese companies that just didn't want to be involved for some reason. Even though Spielberg was involved.
They make a lot of Japanese references in the book to like the Japanese Spider-Man and like the robots are like almost all anime characters.
Well, all the video games came from Japanese companies. So like, and then there was the anime stuff that was happening in the 80s. And so those are references to, and all of that is IP that I guess Steven Spielberg does not have the pull he does in Japan that he does here.
All right.
Maybe he can get some for the next movie. I don't know. That is my hypothesis, Jack's Law. I'm not actually 100% certain, but just looking at how many things they had to license in the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. This would be a contracting nightmare. I don't know how.
How many lawyers? Like, I imagine the lawyers looking like the entire, like all the IOI characters running around whenever they get like hit over with the red things.
Yeah,
that was funny when they would all just like be thrown over.
The lawyers for this movie just being like, I don't know, we can't get
them down, and then having to get up and scurry and run over to the next contract.
Yeah, no, it was, I don't know. So yeah, the contracts for this one would have been weird. Let's see here. I'm trying to think of anything else. I love ripping into movies, but I always like to be like, no one wants to make a bad movie, and I get that. But this just didn't, in my opinion, it just didn't work. So we always conclude this with like, did we like the book or did we like the movie better? And I think the answer is unanimous here. The book was better.
Hated the movie. But I think I have. Is Crazy Rich Asians the only movie that I've actually liked?
Didn't you like one of the TV show adaptations that we watched?
Oh, I like Queen's Gambit, of course.
Yeah, I think we all liked Queen's Gambit.
We all like Queen's Gambit, and we all like Crazy Which White Jones?
Crazy Rich Asians, yeah. But I think by and large we're actually really leaning towards liking the book more. Which I'm surprised that I'm leaning towards liking the books more, because I'm always like, the movie is great, it's fine. But
here's what I need to do with the next one. I'm gonna watch it's a TV show, which is I'm watching the TV show first, and then I will read the book so that because I always read the book first, and so of course I'm gonna love the book more.
Yeah, it is interesting how that changes your perspective a little bit. So for the coming months, we usually do this on the last Thursday of the month at about 8 p.m. Mountain Time. So tune in or watch the rerun, or we're doing for April, we're doing A Discovery of Witches, which is you can watch it on Amazon, and you can get the book wherever your lovely books are sold. And it has a lot of like magical themes and world building stuff that kind of goes along with the adventure we have on the Twitch channel that I play in on Tuesdays. So come to that. Yay. And then Chloe wears someone's reading glasses. Oh no, you're so mean.
Glasses.
Oh, fine. I'll wear, you know what? Actually, I have reading glasses. Fuel caution. I do. I will bring them next time, and we'll be dizzy the whole time, but I'll bring them. Nice. So Discovery of Witches is April. Murder on the Nile is going to be May, and we'll do the very new movie adaptation that just came out. So you guys have plenty of time to watch that. Okay. And Agatha Christie's classic Murder on the Nile.
Can I just say, Murder on the Nile, that reminds me of either like an Agatha Christie book, a Nancy Drew book, or a Boxcar Children book.
Well, it is an Agatha Christie book. So we're good. With Inspector Poirot and everything. So it should be great. And then
we do Murder on the Orient Express.
They actually have a great mood. Yes, we can do that as a bonus. So Murder on the Nile, and watch Murder on the Orient Express too if you want to. There's one. So Kenneth Branagh is Clouseau in this new generation of Agatha Christie adaptations that they're doing. So it's really fun. And yes, fuel caution, I accept the challenge. I will I will do this with reading glasses. And I have reading glasses because, fun story, I used to have a lazy eye. So I have reading glasses.
That's okay. My family has the Luby eye.
The what?
Luby eye.
I don't know what that is.
It's a family lazy eye. Their last name is the Lubies.
Oh,
Irish. Weird Irish name.
All right. Cool. So April's Discovery of Witches. Last Thursday of May is Murder on the Nile. And if you want to, or Murder on Orient Express. And then June, I'm really excited about because we're doing Annihilation, which the movie and the book are a little bit older, but the themes for that 100% are kind of what we're basing some of our magic rules on for the Twitch stream, the adventure that we do on Tuesday nights. So, yeah, those are our upcoming read watch events. And if you guys, as always, if you guys have suggestions for what you want to see read, we could be talked into doing this more often if there's actual interest. But yeah. So I think that's it, unless you have anything to add, Erin.
I have nothing to add. Thanks for coming in, dropping in, Jack's Law and Fuel Caution, and anyone else who didn't make their presence known.
We love you. We appreciate you. And we look forward to reading with you some more. So we'll see you guys in about a month, unless you tune in on Tuesdays.
Tune in on Tuesdays. Also, I love your stickers in your store.
We're having more stickers, by the way. They're going to be here. There's more stickers coming. There's more stickers coming.
I need more stickers for various things. So, I would love to support your sticker cost.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah. Go to there's a little loot store. If you're watching this on Twitch, there's a loot store. If you're not watching it on Twitch, you can go to twitch.tv/uncannypros, and we have a loot store. Most of the art is actually from our D&D campaign where I was playing the fabulous Bard, but we're getting updated stuff for Weldport in our current adventure. So thank you, Jack's Law. We would love to have you again next time, and we'll see everybody else in about a month.
Last Thursday of every month.
Yes, 8 o'clock Mountain Time. We'll see you then. Bye.